Are you able to hear me and are able to see the video, right?
Yeah, now I can see us.
Okay, thank you.
Shall we start?
Yeah,
I
we can
think
start.
recording also started. Yeah, okay. Fine. Can you share your technical background?
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for this giving this opportunity, and I have total 12 years of experience. Coming to the technical background, I was working with a lead software engineer. Uh, the technology which has been working with the .NET Core, microservices, Azure, and earlier I was working with the .NET MVC databases like SQL Server and different like MongoDB and the databases like NoSQL table storage. I do have exposure on the in terms of AWS too. I was working as I want to become a architect with the multi-cloud. That is the reason I was choosing with the AWS and Azure. Um, I was completed a MCA from Acharya Nagarjuna University. I do have the good exposure on different domains like healthcare, banking domain, and catering domain and educational domain as well.
Okay. Can you explain why C# doesn't support multiple inheritance?
Because multiple inheritance, if you want to base class A, there could be a two child B and child C. There might be other child also is trying to extend of two sub childs. Those cases, it is very difficult to identify the references between whenever we are calling as a child references as equal to sub child reference. That time it will be very difficult to identify which object we are going to call the methods.
Okay. Can you explain the workflow of the garbage collector?
Yeah. Uh, Basically, the garbage collector it will reclaim that objects on the different phases. Whenever the system is running out of memory, there could be some kind of background process will run as based on the some the expression in terms of hourly based or based on the background thread will run every 5 minutes or some other time, and it could be as some kind of the physical memory based on the some threshold is trying to reach it, that time it will reclaim it. But basically the background we have the GC collect, like we have the three different phases: phase one and phase two and phase three. Phase one is a long lived, like short lived objects and medium lived objects, and third phase is a long lived objects. In terms of whenever the GC will try to reclaim that objects in the phase one, and the phase one in the sense short-lived object, whenever object is created and performing a operation, whenever the lifetime of the object is completed, it will try to reclaim that object and it will allocate the memory of the heaps based on the root nodes.
Okay. Can you explain the difference between dispose and finalize method?
Yeah, dispose method basically unmanaged code release the reclaim that objects, and finalize method which we want to have to collect the gc.collect method internally, it will we will use the finalize method.
Okay. Can you explain solid principles?
Yeah. Solid principles S stands for a single responsibility. Basically, the class is having a single reason for change. It could have that single responsibility of the operation. If there any of the operation which is deviating of the single responsibility, we need to create a subclasses. If you want, we can inherit or we can implement. This stands for single responsibility. O for open closed principle. The class is the well defined and well tested. If you want to include the new functionality to that functionality to that class, it could be closed for modification, open for extension. There could be the possibilities of to make the class a sealed class or abstract class. then no one will be able to modify it. And if to do want to extend it, we need to make it as a subclass, or we can make it as a uh, uh, other classes which is trying to override the methods in terms of virtual and override. And I stands for interface segregation. I do have the different implementations or different standards. I don't want to make all the clients to implement it, even though they don't want to use the specific standards. Standards in the sense, I have the methods. I will provide those standards or method names to the outside of the world. But few of the clients, they don't want to use. For example, if you take one of the bank, they don't want to use the credit card facility. If you want to implement all the things in a single interface, if we will tell them all the clients you have to implement, even if you don't want to use it, that is that will be leads in terms of single responsibility violation. And we can call them as Liskov substitutional principle. It is very good example in terms of a base, a parent and child class. Each child class should be in terms of substitutable of the type base. For example, if I create an object of a parent obj equal to new child 1, the same reference we can able to use that obj equal new child 2. In this case, I don't want to create a heap and maintain the references and all the things. I can able to use the child class will be child type should be substitutable of the base type. Another thing we can call as inversion of control in terms of as a developer, I don't want to take care of object creation, register of objects, and dispose. As a we can use the third party libraries or third party framework, or those things we can able to register and resolve it and dispose. Those can be taken care of inversion of the developer or other controls.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you explain how this dependency injection works in .NET Core?
Yeah, .NET Core dependency injection will work in terms of three different phases. One is scoped services, transient service, and single turn service. How it will work in the sense, if you take as an example of transient service, it will create an object each and every time, whether the same context is using or different context is using. Whenever it is required, it will create a new object. And singleton, it won't create a multiple object. It will create an object for that specific session. And the scoped one, we can have the context lifetime. If the context is having this lifetime, it will try to use that same object. Otherwise, it will try to create, if the context is created newly, it will try to create a new object for each context for user.
Okay. Can you explain the unit of work repository pattern?
Unit of work repository pattern also will be useful to make as a dependency injection. As I haven't used, but theoretically I know this concept. Basically, whenever we are using an MVC, I want to register for all the interfaces and implementation to use this unit of repository at once and dependency injection. Whenever it is needed, if you pass the specific particular type, it will try to give us an instance of the required type.
Okay. Can you explain the difference between IQueryable and IEnumerable?
Yeah, as part of we have used in different scenarios like IQueryable. Whenever we are trying to get the live data for each and every time, like whenever I performed as a where condition, order by condition, and all the things, it will try to hit that round trip to the server, database server, and trying to fetch the data based on the condition. But in IEnumerable is not like that. It will load the data in memory of a particular application which is having that process. It will try to filter on the in-memory collection, not for the database collection. And it will reduce the number of round trips and it will improve the performance. We need to choose that option based on our requirement. For example, the transaction database is trying to insert every minute of second or every second, so we can go ahead with IQueryable. If it is not like, if it is a master data, we can go ahead with IEnumerable.
Okay. Have you used any unit testing frameworks?
Yeah, Mark and XUnit.
Okay. Can I explain the test-driven development process?
Test-driven development process. This is also I don't have that experience, but I know that theoretical things because I did not get a chance. What it will happen, we need to create a test cases, and we need to make the test cases has to be failed. Based on the test case failed requirement, the original implementation of the controller action method we need to implement.
Can you explain why we use a mock?
Uh, Mock basically I don't want to create in the original services and original implementation of the calls to happen. I want to create some kind of dummy interface, a dummy kind of an object. I want to call that object by using this mock framework to pass the data, to pass the models using the uh, to validate the functional, to validate the behavior of the code. It's not for functionality of the code.
Okay. When a user requests a URL from a browser, so how the MEC application respond with the page?
Yeah, basically we have two steps like a request phase and response phase. Request phase, what it is meaning, the request will come to the browser. From the browser it will try to check from the global.asx, and it will check the route. Base background, what it is happening is it will try to insert the route from the route table, or if the route is already available, the context is already the context is new request or old request, it will try to fetch it. If it is already the route is available, if it is not there, it will try to save it. After that it will try to get the route. Based on the route, it will be hand out, it will create as a context, http context. After creation of http context, we know it will, the context will be input to the controller factory. Controller factory will create an object based on the context, what is a controller, what is an action method, and what are the steps we need to perform in terms of the view. The second step is the view result, and it will go to the, is there is any filters are available in terms of before execution of action method, after execution of action method, is there is any result filters are available. Those things will be coming to the picture, and it will give to the view engine. View engine will perform as a razor pages to normal pages, and it will give it to the browser. Browser will be able to display that HTML pages.
Okay. Can you explain attribute routing?
Yeah, attribute routing. We can define that attribute routing in terms of controller level or action method level. Attribute routing, it will try to check what is the I want to hide that original controller name and implementation. I want to create an alias names for that action methods or controllers. I can go ahead with the attributes based routing.
Okay. Can you explain the difference between SOAP and REST?
So basically it will be have the uh, XSD format. Basically the request has to come XSD, and it will be try to validate the request, and it will give us a response in terms of XSD. But in the rest is kind of based on the accept header, it will try to allow in terms of JSON or XML or both the format or text format. And rest is a standard. If you want to use with the multiple clients in terms of the language dependency, in terms of the technology dependency, rest is one of the suggestible approach rather than the SOAP.
Okay. Can you explain the steps to implement Web API versioning?
Yeah, we need to use as third party one of the DLL using as versioning, and we need to add as the one of the middleware in services in the .NET Core, which I am talking about. And we can able to implement we can able to add that the route as v1 of version number slash controller name slash action method name, and it will be able to use that versioning all over the places on the controllers in .NET Core. But .NET MVC I haven't get a chance to make as a versioning.
Okay. So can you explain like high level steps on how to consume an external API, REST API? in an MEC application?
Okay. We can use in different ways. As I have used in my experience, we can use the HTTP web request, and a web request we need to send as a request in terms of we need to identify whether it is a get request or post request, put or patch. We need to pass as a different ways of the parameters passing. If it is in a head, if it is in get, we need to pass as in query pams or URL. If it is a put or patch, we need to pass as in terms of body, and delete also we can also pass as a URL to the header might be different. But whatever I have seen, like most of the peoples are using HTTP client, and HTTP client will provide more terms of in terms of asynchronous mechanism to get async, put async, save async, and all the things. If you want to go ahead with async mechanism, we know that we will get a lot of performance implication and stuff for waiting the main thread, and it will try to create a in terms of state management, it will try to call the API, and other thread will try to execute it. Whenever we need a response, it will wait it.
Okay. Can you explain the use of index in SQL?
Index, basically the advantages as well as disadvantages using of index. Index will try to retrieve the data faster. While we are trying to insert the data, if the table is having the more index, it will give us a less more time to insert the data.
Okay. What are the different index?
Cluster index and non-cluster index. Basically, these major thing we are using, and uh, cluster index, which will use as a binary search to search the data based on the partitioning or based on the data which was saved in the files SQL file background. But non-cluster index, it will not follow the binary search. It will try to follow it will try to find out as a sequential manner.
Okay. Can you explain the difference between stored procedure and function?
Stored procedure and function. Basically, the stored procedure we want to perform in terms of I want to retrieve multiple result sets. The functions will not return multiple result sets. Stored procedure will return multiple result sets. And we can also perform in terms of the DML operation in the stored procedure. Functions will not support only getting the data, and functions will have in terms of the transaction and try catch handling. It is more it is more efficient way compared to the functions. There are other ways we can also there, like small differences. We can call the functions inside of we can't call the stored procedure inside a function. We can call the function inside of the stored procedure. What I see, one of the major advantage, if you can use the stored procedure, it will use that query execution plan. Initially, it will execute and it will not go to the for next time the request will come. It will try to use that existing execution plan instead of execution plan involving of reading the data and IO operation and CPU and all the things. But functions will not do like that.
Okay. What are the cloud services I have now? Different cloud services. Either in Azure or AWS.
Yeah, I have a good exposure on Azure, and I have a basic exposure on AWS too.
Okay.
And I have exposure on Azure DevOps to create the pipeline in terms of ML pipeline creation, and involving of creation of non-prod environment to deployment and approval process, and maintaining of Git online Visual Studios services using the Git and branches, and maintaining of those as well.
Can you explain the task that is required to host and or deploy MEC application?
Yeah. We need to have first of all we need to check out the branch that is default. We have a jobs, and the first inside of a job we have the stage. First stage is build and deploy stage. Inside of the stage we have the task. We need to build that application. before building, we need to restore the nugget packages. After that, we need to build that application. We need to publish that artifacts, and we need to copy that artifact to the in terms of staging directory in say drop folder or app folder like that. And the next stage is the deploy stage. Inside of the deploy, we can have the multiple tasks. We need to download that the deploy artifacts, and we need to we need to connect to the, if it is a app service deployment, we can able to use that task which is the code which is trying to deploy as a web deploy. Or if it is an IaaS server, we need to connect to the VM, and by using the SAS token, and we need to publish to the AS and restart that AS. It depends on the case to case of the deployment.
I lost you in between. Can you repeat that IAS part?
Yeah, we need to, for example, if it is an on-prem connectivity, if we want to host as an on-prem, I need to connect with the SAS token by using the shell script. Those SAS token, what I mean to say, we need to create the token, and we need to give as a service connection the token. We need to publish to the specific folder, and we can able to do. If it is an app service deployment, we can also directly using as one of the predefined tasks. We can use that one. We can give as an input, and it will try to deploy to the specific app service by using the service connections, which was mentioned in the project settings.
Okay. Can you explain like how do you configure the IAS when you want to host a new web application?
You mean to say on-prem deployment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do in different ways, like from the Visual Studio also we can do that. But basically, we need to create a new folder, and we need to create as a virtual a path of the particular folder, and we need to set up as an application app service pool, application pool. And application pool depend on the which version of a classic ASP or ASP.NET version, and we need to set up how many of the worker processes has to be defined. Those are all the things will come into the picture, and we need to enable the default browsing initially to check whether the data is the published code will be able to see all the things or not.
Okay. So when you host an application, like how do you make sure that application is able to access if there are any SQL database, SQL server that needs to be connected from the application, whether it's working or not? How do you make sure this connection?
Yeah, we have different ways we have implemented in one of a few of my applications. We have used as a login. Whenever we have a health check of we need to implement one of the endpoint to check health check. And in this health check, I want to implement of what are the basic things are needs to be tested. I can call that I can call that endpoints using some kind of the token to check whenever the request will come to the particular endpoint. I need to log to the what are the things, what is it connected, database connectivity, FTP connectivity, all the things is happened properly or not. I need to, maybe I can return as an one of the response object for the health point, or I can able to, if it is a confidential, I can able to write into the file, and I will try to download that file by using the DevOps team.
Okay. So, say for example, the database configuration that's there in the web application is integrated security. So, since you are deploying this application in a different server, so how do you enable the access to the database from your from the application that is posted?
Yeah, we need to go to the firewalls, and we need to enable the port number. Particular port number is running 1433 or some other port number of the SQL server. We need to enable that port number, and based on the port number, it will try to connect. Application will check on the firewall of the particular VM or on-premise server. If it is port number is enabled, it will try to connect to the database. Otherwise, it will not connect to the database.
Okay. Here you have an application, especially like say a web application where a user is trying to upload a data from a screen, and we have multiple steps happening. The file will first upload, then there will be some data processing happening. After that, it will the data will be uploaded, saved to the database. So these are the steps happening. Say this process is taking like 5 minutes to complete. So what is the user? How do we? What are the suggestions you have to improve the user experience? How you can design this application?
Yeah, the design of this application, I can whenever the user is upload, I can give as an acknowledgement to the user. I don't want to make that user has to be waited for 5 minutes to complete that process. There might be other process they will try to perform it, and I will use as a some background task, or I will try to create some kind of background services to perform this activity. I can push it. I can send as a notification by using the signal, or I can give as some separate one of the pop-up of the particular screen, or sending the email notification once the process is completed. But the background, whatever the things, the file has to be processed and try to save the data. I will try to split it as a separate chunk of the data. If I have the one like 20 MB of 20 MB of the data, I can divide into the based on the requirement. I can able to divide the data into the chunks, and the chunk file of the processing it will be faster, and we can use in terms of bunch bulk transfer to the data to insert instead of one by one, or instead of a merge statement. I can use as a bulk transfer. It will try to save the data or update the data based on the configuration. It is case to case. It depends on the requirement, but I don't want to make that user has to be hang there of 5 minutes. I can use as a push notification or email notification, or give as a grid in terms of after completion of the 2 minutes. Whenever the user received the email, it will try to come and it will try to see whether the job is processed successfully, or it is error completed with errors or failed. I can able to show the notification.
Okay. Say for example, for the same process, if the design was like they have in the backend they have created asynchronous task for it, and if they wanted to have a cancel option in the UI, so how do you implement in this step?
In this case, the grid approach is one of the option. We need to enable that the cancellation button. If the we need to save that one of the request in the background, and those requests has to be displayed in the grid as a some process ID or some kind of ID for the file processing. I need to enable one of the button as cancellation, and we have the cancellation source for the task. We have the one of the advantages by using the cancellation source, so we can able to cancel the task. But otherwise, I can also do one thing. Once completion of the process, also whenever user click on the cancel, I want to change the status, or I can save this information into the some staging table. If there is any request will come from the in terms of the cancellation, I want to cancel that entire I want to make this change some status of the particular record, and maybe I can able to delete it. We can have the different ways. We can also use the cancellation source. If the data is already, if you are using asynchronous mechanisms, if you have the chunks of the data is already saved, those the data I will make it as initially I will make it as a hold status. Whenever user click on that cancellation, I will change the status to cancelled one, and I don't want to check. I will change the cancel one. I can move to some temporary table, and I can delete from the records from the particular stage table to don't want to process it again.
Okay. Can you explain your code review process? So how do you review your code?
Yeah, code review process we are using as resharper, and we have used as a static code analysis to do the some kind of a memory leakage in terms of password leakage kind of thing. But we can have the manual review as well to check whether the user is followed as uh, coding standards or not, naming conventions or not, whether they have been implemented in terms of try catching and null handling exception has been implemented properly or not, and in terms of database connectivity or database implementing the new stored procedure, whether any of optimization approaches has been taken care in terms of pair condition or join condition. And those are there are different standards we have been implemented in terms of the guidelines. We need to follow those guidelines before approving the PR. PR will be approved by the lead only. Before creating the PR, they have their own peer review process with the uh, colleagues to check whether it is requiring of at least few of the standards will be met or not.
Okay. What are the estimation strategies you follow in your project?
Estimation strategy. We have that 2 weeks sprint. They will. I was involving of sprint review and backlog grooming sessions, and we'll take as a user story, and the user story has to be divided along with the team members, front end team, back end team, as well as DBA team, as well as it also including as test driven in terms of test driven or in terms of unit testing. Those are all the things. One of the task, one of the user story, it might be 5 story points or 10 story points. 5 story points, one developer, 5 days. In this 5 story point, I need to maybe we need to divide into front end task, back end task, or database in terms of performance, in terms of test driven. Though based on the experience of the people, based on the what are the functionality, it might be impacting of. If it is a new user story, that is fine. If it is an existing user story which is which may be impacting of existing things, are also need to be think. And also plus 10 or 15 of 15 of like 10 or 15 percentage of some kind of uh, uh, tempo in terms of if the teams is having any of the planned leaves or unplanned leaves or health issues, all the things will be come into the picture while we are giving an estimate of a particular user story.
Okay. All the stories will be delivered to UAT.
Stories will be delivered. We have a QA team. The approach is QA, from QA to UAT, UAT to production. QA team will be the internal team, which will validate and which will be give a sign off to proceed to the UAT. UAT team is completely business user. Along with our QA team seniors will be coordinating with the business user, try to test it and try to validate, and they will pass it. Once the release will be every monthly, but sprint by weekly. Once the sprint will be completed, the sprint will be given to the UAT. But next sprint, the development will start. The business user will try to complete of all things in a month, and every month we have the build of whatever the user stories we are going to deliver.
Okay. How do you define if a sprint is a success or failure?
It's a retrospective meetings. We will get some kind of if the build was given, we know that the next 2 or 3 days we knows that what could be the blockers or urgents or issues, or if there is any production the blocker the application will getting delayed because of some of the impact got missed or something. Based on this thing, we need to have the retrospective meeting, and based on the retrospective meeting we can define as before retrospective meeting, we know what is the whether it is a success. It could not be the failure. Whether it is a succeed, or there might be improvement in terms of impact of the current code. It could be the some kind of a lessons learned of the previous build.
What is the tools you're using for logging?
Serilog we are using, and in Azure we have the monitor as a log stream, and we in the microservices we have used as Azure Elastic and Kibana.
Okay. Have you used any reporting services?
Uh, I haven't used any reporting service. We are using as Crystal reports. Like 5 years back, but I don't have any knowledge on other reporting service.
So you used SSRS model.
SSRS I know, but we have the separate team to implement as SSRS. But I know that concept, but I did not get a chance to implement as my own.
Okay. That's all I have. Do you have any questions from you?
I just want to understand, is it what is exactly the requirement? Is it a bulk requirement or a pool requirement or a specific project requirement? Can I know that one?
So pool requirement.
Okay. No problem. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for your information. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.